Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to episode 19 of Everything Meta. Welcome, Joey. How are you today, man?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing well, doing well. Let's get some disclaimer language up here.
I can't believe we're on episode 19. When did that
Yeah,
happen?
man. Yeah. Look, yes. Let's see what we have. Where what do we have here? I'll run this.
I see it.
I'll run this. Yeah. Let me edit it because this one is the one I used. I'll let it ride because we
Cool.
will be making references anyway. So today's show, I want to talk about the many uses, of decentralized finance and decentralized science as it pertains to solving some of the world's issues. So as we've often discussed at this point, we have a particular emphasis at the moment based on the needs of the journal for the science style is to kind of find topics that we're going to be able to deal with as a basis for a starting point for the journal. However, there are many uses of decentralized finance and science to solve some problems. So I want to have a little back and forth with you. I want to give you a problem as defined by the United Nations. And I want you to kind of answer or give me your first thought of what the space, not necessarily Yasha, not necessarily the science style, but what the space can do to help, and why you think maybe decentralized finance or decentralized science is uniquely qualified to help uh, solve some of the problems that have been problems for decades. Does that work?
Yep.
All right. So again, I'm going with United Nations, UN.org. It's a list of top global issues. Um, the first one, I believe these are just in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Africa. It says the UN system plays a crucial role in coordinating assistance of all kinds to help Africa help itself, from promoting the development of democratic institutions to the establishment of peace between warring nations. The UN is present on the ground supporting economic and social development and the promotion and protection of human rights. So, again, the question is the UN's doing a job, the UN's been working hard. What is it that the space can do to help? Why or how could decentralized finance or decentralized science step in and do accelerate the job or somehow enhance the job that's being done already?
Well, I think for decentralized finance, everybody having, gosh, so many people have a mobile device, right? Granted, there are some that don't, right? But maybe somebody in that family has a mobile device, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think the idea of being your own bank, I think sorry. I think the idea of being your own bank, you're right, and having some autonomy in regards to your finances and some of the places where you hold some of your funds. I think what you're seeing in many countries around the world is countries that are suffering from hyperinflation, and it's possible having a means of exchange that is not tied directly to a country's currency, right? But of local vendors, local farmers, service providers, so on and so forth. We're to accept, like a global type currency, that can be used anywhere. Kind of like what the dollar is, but it's not like people, in some situations can just walk around with all of their finance, right? Like all of their cash,
Right.
on them at any given time, right? Um, so yeah, I think that there's that, and then other social issues in developing countries and whatnot. There's a few blockchain projects people don't know about, like NKN, New Kind of Network, which is essentially it's its own blockchain where it uses people's cell phones and mobile devices as nodes, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
blockchain. It's a very large blockchain at this point, when you consider maybe they have 100,000 individuals sometimes providing a node to that network. There's I think it's like Helium Network, HNKHK. I'm not exactly sure the ticker right now, but they're using available bandwidth, right? They're using available bandwidth on people's devices to create a mesh network for internet, right? And so it's similar to and now you have Starlink, right? And Elon could very well be like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this entire region gets free internet, pay me back sometime in the future. But um for the immediate, you know future, there are blockchain projects, right, that create these networks, on people's cell phones. So like if me, my neighbor, some other neighbor, I say my neighbor because I only have like one neighbor. But if
Yeah.
we had, yeah, I know. If we created the mesh network, then potentially we could have created our own internet by contributing bandwidth, right? That we're not
Mm-hmm.
using. Probably work better in like an apartment complex, right? Because there's lots of neighbors.
Yeah.
My one neighbor over there, maybe they don't have the bandwidth, uh, that we all need. So
Sure.
anyway, did that kind of answer? Just a
Yeah. 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 No, these are
couple
great.
projects out there, a couple projects out there.
The next one is aging. And just to give a synopsis, says the world's population is aging. Virtually every country in the world is experiencing growth in the number and population of older persons in their population. The number of older persons, those aged 60 and over, has increased substantially in recent years in most countries and regions, and that growth is projected to accelerate in the coming decades. So, just the idea of what it is that people need when they get older. What do we imagine? Like, what can we contribute in that space?
Well,
We
so
generically, that is.
I mean, we'll pop into the science stuff. We'll kind of tie it into the science stuff first, right? Like longevity research is a huge field, an emerging field, right? Like how do we
Mm-hmm.
live longer? How do we get
Mm-hmm.
less disease? How do we stay healthy, right? Because the aging population is, um, has had a lot of time to think about, these things, and most
Yeah.
of the modern day scientific discoveries and whatnot are, I mean, I wouldn't say most, but are coming from the aging population, right? Like a lot of the principles and whatnot that they laid down, and so longevity research, one, be cool to find some type of longevity, type of project for the science style. I think that'd be cool. Whether even if it's just diet related, right? Which can be, a huge part of it, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
To eliminate disease, like watching what you eat and exercising, so on and so forth. And then goodness, uh, I'm I'm not exactly sure, but I think that there's, lots of clever people out there, smarter than I am, that can come up with, whether it's trusts or savings accounts, like passing inheritances down via the blockchain,
Mm.
wills and whatnot
Mm-hmm.
on the ledger, publicly written on the ledger,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that people can use blockchain for, you know. You always got to be careful. I was watching this movie the other day. I think it was Blade Runner 2049. I feel
Yeah,
like
it
I
was because you told me that you were watching it. I told you I never saw it. You were talking about was it farming protein worms?
farming protein. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I'm like all in the sci-fi Blade Runner, thing, but they had like some type of event, solar flare something, and
Hmm.
all data, electronic data was erased, right? And so they started holding data offline, for the future, right? So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if blockchain would be the absolute best, right? If it, the solar flare can come and take it away, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
In fairness, or maybe going back to your point about longevity and diet, I was wow, I don't remember the exact range, but it was like either 125 to 140 years is the time a body could probably make it before all of its major components would break down from just general wear and tear, regardless of kind of the general health. Like how many, how long can a heart beat? How long can lungs continue to expand and contract before they just basically wear out?
right.
And so, you know, I mean, but diet sure could get us a much further, a much longer lifespan. I do believe for sure, especially in America.
Yeah.
Uh, proper diet. But that also would open up some other issues, though. Yeah, like now you have so many people alive. You have population issues, and then we have
I'm not gonna go into that.
work. We're not doing that.
I won't go there. I won't go there. But yeah, the if you look at the Earth as an organism, right? And but I won't go there.
Pass. Our pass. All right. Um,
You're probably on to something.
we'll talk offline, I guess. Let's see. Um, I'm going to not going to. I'm going to I'm going to lump these two together and just see if you have a response. The next one is AIDS, and the one after that is atomic energy. Um, choose one, choose both, hit on them. I mean, I could read the excerpts, but I think they may be pretty self-explanatory.
Either way.
So yeah, all right, let's go. AIDS, HIV infections have fallen by 35% since year 2000, and that's 58% amongst children. And AIDS-related deaths have fallen by 42% since the peak in 2004. The global response to HIV has averted 30 million new HIV infections and nearly 8 million AIDS related deaths since 2000. The UN family has been in the vanguard of the process. Uh, Progress, they say. So, yeah, I mean, so this is probably clearly on the DeSci side. I mean, what, besides just general research or funding, I mean, we seem to have a much better handle on it than I ever expected we would back in the 90s. What are your thoughts on areas of contribution?
You know what? I'm the wrong person, but you know what's crazy? Actually, my mom might be one of the most qualified people in the world to talk on HIV and AIDS. Reason being because she is a doctor, an immunologist, and scientist, and has had many published and cited papers on the
Mm,
transmission of HIV.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
some of her
yeah,
original research back in the 80s was on HIV, and a lot of her published works have been cited many times, right?
yeah.
So,
So she
but
was
yeah,
she was in a part of the research right as this was breaking. Then you're saying,
exactly on
yeah,
transmission.
yeah.
Yeah, on transmission. I think that yeah. I won't say it on a podcast on exactly what she was, exactly what the
Yeah,
research and everything, in case I say something wrong, right?
yeah.
But yeah, and God, I don't know if I'm the right person, but always with time and with more energy devoted to something, I think that you can chip away and make progress and eventually curb and change the trajectory of something even globally, right? I think that it is possible. So like take this diabetes situation, for instance, right? Like the
Hmm.
the proliferation of the American diet, right? Around the world, it has sort of led in this growth trajectory for that more and more diabetes popping up around the world in places where it really wasn't present prior, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so that's like one thing that we're seeing, like, and that's a growth. We're not curbing anything right now. It's growing, like diabetes deaths or everything are growing each year. Um, Heavily, some genetic, right? Obviously, and then some certain genes more expressed with diet choices and lifestyle choices, and so on and so forth. Again, I am not the expert. It would be better to have our side owl advisor,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Jaume, come on. Just giving a disclaimer. I am, I'll do my
yeah.
best. Yeah,
It's okay. Neither of us are medical professionals. It's fine. We're just we're speculating. We're having a
the truth.
yeah, yeah. So and then so that was paired with atomic energy. I'll bypass unless you have anything particular you want to say. The next issue is big data for sustainable development. And the blurb is the volume of data in the world is increasing exponentially. New sources of data, new technologies, and new analytical approaches, if applied reasonably, can allow to better monitor progress toward achievement of the SDGs in a way that is both inclusive and fair. So these sustainable development goals. What do you make of big data research? How do we add to that space? We in DeFi
Oh goodness.
or in
Well,
DeSci,
first and
either side.
foremost, I'll say that it's not only like like the data collection, is the progress, right? In many cases. And what
Hmm.
you're going to see is that well, what we've seen is social media companies, medical companies, right? Like research labs, um, basically become data companies.
Right.
At the end of the day, like for their product to run the functions in a generator to see what will happen based on their previously obtained data. They need an entire data center,
Hmm.
and so I think that's the reason. Well, not that specifically, but that's one of the reasons why you've seen big data really grow, right? Is because there are so many industries that can benefit and grow faster based on software analyzing that data and putting it into like AI ML type stuff. The more data that is available, the faster you can draw conclusions based on a set of parameters and previously recorded information, right? And so yeah, I'm not sure how with blockchain, it's gosh, everything is already recorded. I'm not sure it's going to solve anything
Hmm.
on a research level, right? On a research level, however, each block being recorded and stored is a different way than previously on how to essentially immemorialize
Memorialize.
memorialize or just have solidly recorded previous events, right?
Yeah.
Like a history of events. And so I think that is pretty cool itself, right?
Hmm.
So is having all those blocks and some type of timestamp, right?
Tesla, uh, car company, data company.
Software company, right? Robotics company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're a robotics company. I think the Tesla car is a robot, my opinion, with the software needed to run it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously they have a, but I'm not the perfect guys. I'll tell you, I'm just spitting out opinions here, right? Like I'm not the
That's what we do. That's
yeah.
the
Okay,
show.
okay.
That's
Yeah,
the whole show.
I'm not the one. But yeah, yeah. I think it's a robotics company, right? The car being the robot, and then also the entire manufacturing facility is based on robotics, right? And then
Mm,
you need to build the software needed to not only assemble all the cars, right? It's not like somebody is just making this. I think there's a lot of parts in Teslas that are totally custom, right? Like the way they wrap the engines, everything.
mm,
They
mm,
had to invent, right, certain processes in order to actually build these cars that could go that fast, right? So on and so forth. So it's fastest production car ever made, using an alternative engine source, right? So they had to kind of invent some things. And then the software needed, like they have more miles logged for autonomous drive. I think the amount of data that they have, right? And this ties back into data,
right.
big data
Yeah.
is for autonomous driving, right? They need their software to get smarter and smarter and smarter, and it needs that data based on their cameras and sensors, in order to get better over time, right? And
Hmm.
so it will continue to get better. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I asked the question because I wonder often whether Elon decides, hey man, the best way to collect the data is to stick it in a car and sell you the car. Like I wonder what's more important to him: is it the collection of data generally, or the proving of the technology of the Tesla itself? Like I
Uh,
believe that the
Only he can answer that, but man, that
yeah.
data is valuable. They are like way, way ahead. I don't know the exact figure, but I think the next runner up in terms of data collection for autonomous driving, right, development
Mm.
is a VW, and I think that Tesla is like years ahead. Like nobody even comes close in regards to the amount of data that a piece of software can use to get better and develop autonomous driving.
VW is also BMW. Is that right?
No, no, I don't believe so. Volkswagen owns several car companies, and does production for several car companies, but I don't think that they
Hmm.
own BMW.
Okay.
I I don't know. I'd have
Now,
to
you could be right. I don't. I don't. I
open
was
book
trying to think
test.
of things I heard. Yeah. Making
No,
sense of things
VW is
I
a
thought.
massive car company. I mean, probably the most valuable car company aside from Tesla, right? Um, so
Let me see. I'm doing a little fact checking here on the side.
yeah,
What can I find with the world's slowest internet?
yeah.
Uh,
I believe it's the second most valuable car company is Volkswagen, and there's a number of brands that they own and manufacture for, uh, like a whole slew. Um,
well, you should know the first question when I type in VW and BMW is VW owned by BMW, which means at least I'm not the only person thought
oh,
it. Yeah, so it's cool. I see. I believe maybe where I'm getting this as I'm looking, VW was owned by Rolls Royce Holdings, and I know that there's a Rolls Royce BMW relationship. So I don't know where the VW situation fits, but
I
moving
don't know.
along. Yeah. Children, children. Every child has the right to health, education, and protection, and every society has a stake in expanding children's opportunities in life. Yet around the world, millions of children are denied a fair chance for no reason other than the country, gender, or circumstances into which they are born.
You know what? So this is one of those things. This goes back to population, right?
Yeah.
The kids are the future, right? They're at the end of the day, once an adult, contributes whatever they're going to contribute, or they take away whatever they're going to take away from society and the world, right? Like the people that are going to be left to handle whatever that contribution or take it away of are the kids. And so they're
Hmm.
probably the only thing that development should be geared toward is future generations, right? Like
Hmm.
I know a lot of people's developments and innovations are geared towards, making their life easier, or getting some notoriety on a personal level. Um, but like, so what? There's some older people somewhere in a country that are denying some kids something, right, based on antiquated ideals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
within several years here, those people that are putting those rules in place, they'll be gone anyway. You know what I mean? It's no, I mean, that's the
Yeah.
truth, dude.
Yeah.
Like, they
Yeah.
will expire, and then those kids that were, denied all these things are all screwed, right? And have to overcome all sorts of stuff and reestablish, like, a whole new, world, and,
Mm.
establish a whole new world in society, that is based on trauma that they've already suffered. It's a terrible cycle.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to laugh. Yeah, it's a bad cycle. It doesn't make any sense. The people that are putting those those rules in place, or denying, certain, like education, right? Like, some places girls can't get any education.
Mm.
It's God, I can't even go there, man. You know what I mean? I can't go out on the internet and say something like that, but it's they're serving their purpose as adults based on their ambition, which has a finite timeline, right? Their perspectives, and they will expire, right, at some point.
Sure.
And then those kids that they're disadvantaging, is that a word?
Yep.
Disadvantaging? Uh,
Yeah.
are going to have to try to live in a world that has new ideals, right? Once the old ways expire, and they'll have to try to accomplish that by working through their trauma that was put on them by the previous generation, right? So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. Um, the next one is climate change, but I feel like we've touched on it a bit, so I don't know. Yeah, but what we haven't talked about with regard to climate change is, I mean, there's a research component. Is there outside of understanding how to prevent? I mean, I think we in some ways know some of the things that we could do to help slow climate change. Um, I don't know. I mean, clearly, and I also recognize it's a political issue, as well as a social one, and maybe not a social issue depending on your political position. I think it's important. I think one of the things you pointed out that I often like to point out, one of the last times we talked about this, is the fact that climates change. Like they changed when there were no humans. Climates will continue to change. Are factors that will contribute to the change of climate. Um, what maybe could we do more efficiently to help slow climate change? Uh, maybe communicating. I don't know, record storage on the blockchain that slows mail and delivery, which prevents, I don't know, some form of carbon emissions, but then also generates uh, other uh, uh, pollutants in the process. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Man, this sounds crazy. And I know that people have brought this up in the past, but certain things like glaciers, right? Like
Yeah.
literally covering the glacier with like visqueen or something, right? Like, stopping direct sun penetration.
Yeah. Yeah.
satellite arrays to kind of form some type of polarized lens. You know what I mean? Being able to block certain UV radiation, at the atmospheric level as opposed to down here. So there's things like that. I think that they might seem really basic and more like industrious, right? Because like
Yeah.
you have to go build a bunch of stuff in order to address something. It's like construction. It could be as simple as like building a big net, that can modulate how much UV is actually coming down into the atmosphere, right? And that you stop some of these heat waves that way. And as dumb as that might sound, it might be something like that. You don't know which direction. It's weird, it's a lot of this stuff, although developed, white collar, although developed white collar and developed by academics and whatnot, it generally comes back down to some blue collar effort.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
On getting it done, and it has a bit of industry to it as well, which is kind of cool, because whatever. Sorry, my dog is like right behind me, and he was sleeping and started like snoring and squeaking a second ago, and I'm wondering if people can hear this.
I couldn't pick it up. I don't know.
Okay,
But now people are going to be listening. They're going to go
I know.
back
I was like, what is
and they're
he?
going to be
He's
listening.
literally just right back there squeaking
Yeah.
in his dream. Yeah, a lot of these efforts, although developed by scientists and whatnot, they will be heavily, brought forth with blue collar effort. I bet you a lot of these jobs are very high paying, right? And there's probably an emerging industry specific on like government contracts to address climate change. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'll leave it there. How about democracy?
like
Um,
good.
I don't want to tie down an opinion on whether or not democracy is. Okay, let me say when I think of democracy, I don't necessarily need it to look like the United States context of democracy, right? Whereas and created an environment in which the United States is forcing its democracy on other places.
Mm-hmm.
But if you asked me, in some cases, is it best that the people get to choose their leadership and have a right to or the ability to move up the social structure or what have you and wherever they live, then I'm willing to argue that's a good thing. And in that way, is there something that we can do in the DeFi DeSci space that helps contribute to democracy? I think it ties back in some ways to the thing you mentioned earlier about currency as if you can't be manipulated by your government's money, for instance, or be restricted by your government's money, then it's your path to democracy is probably a bit clearer without the financial pressure from a place that might be more oppressive. But other than that, like, where are you with that? Where do you think?
Oh well, I don't know how to expand on it fully, just to be honest, but I think that it's funny about democracy and blockchain is these DAOs, right? Obviously, we all vote, everything comes together, but they the democratic process doesn't want to take responsibility for its actions. They still want somebody, right, to blame for certain things happening, which I,
Yeah.
I think is like they cannot, for whatever reason, like the pause project, right, was that was not my project. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, that was not any central team that came up with that. That was a bunch of people in the Yasha DAO that were like, hey, this war is breaking out. We should do something about it. They all voted. It was an overwhelming yes on the vote, right? Everybody wanted to do it. There was people
Hmm.
that started off strong, right? They started off strong on helping with development, on helping with branding or what to do. And so I was like, wow, this is cool. This is like really democratic. And so I tried to support as much as possible. And here you have people in the chat that are asking, oh, what's going on with the development? What's happening? It's like, bro, it's your project. What do you mean? Why are you asking what's going on with the development? You're here, you're in the chat because you guys voted to do this, and having all those people take responsibility for it, is going to be tough. That'll be a tough one. You know what
For
I mean?
sure. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, like I've seen some of these democratic processes just people will vote for certain things just to see what happens because they're bored. I don't really know. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't really know, but we're all for it. You know what I mean? We're all for it, but I think there are some flaws, especially if this quasi democracy, just leads to like being able to blame like a few people for the decisions of many, which doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make any sense. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, maybe tying it back to the U.S. context of government. Sometimes you're just making a choice between two things slash people that you could care less, but they're the people that are there that you have to choose between. So you may still get what you want relative to the options, but you truthfully didn't want either of them, right? Like because writing in like peanut butter and jelly wasn't the choice. It was either going to be chicken or pizza today.
yeah.
Right, right. So like, there wasn't going to be enough movement for PB and J to get PB and J, so it was no sense of me picking that. So yeah, like what you find is somebody they're voting and they're getting what they asked for, but they're still not necessarily getting what they wanted, and that is a problem. Yeah.
Can't they just write it in?
I mean, you can, but you would need overwhelming, like then you're relying on enough of the population to come up with the same other, right? But like if you're in a vote where you're getting an up and down vote on do we do this or not, you know, what is my third choice? Is yes, no, maybe. What does maybe get me in this situation? So so like I have to agree with something. I have to go with something if I'm going to use my vote. Um,
Yeah,
and then I don't know. Yeah, democracy has its flaws in that way, or representative democracy, where you find that there are a handful of people who are speaking on the behalf of the many. So then you do blame the few because the few are executing on the behalf of what they feel like the many want, but not everyone that they represent feels that way. And
right,
then specifically, we're talking about DAOs. I think some of the problems are that your vote is weighted based
uh,
on your holdings. And so it's like, yeah, I voted, but my vote mattered way less than someone who's holding a particular amount more.
right,
Right. So, I don't know. There's some challenges.
yeah. Hmm.
Um,
I wonder how to make it equal. probably just a voting token.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, like, everyone just have to get one, like one share, one vote, or like, hey, one wallet, one. Well, I mean, even then, you don't know how many wallets, whatever. But the minute that you say the person with 100 million tokens gets, their vote means this much, and the person with 1 million tokens, their vote means that much, and then we're back to that argument: does my vote really count? Does it make sense for me to vote? I have such a small say, no matter what I come up with, like whatever the decision making, is it is the reason why in the U.S. context we have an electoral college, because otherwise you go to California, you go to Florida, you go to Texas, you whip up the votes of all the people in the big states, and you'd be like, okay, that's enough. All right. a few big cities, like we never have to check in Nebraska because who cares? It's not enough of you, right? So in the DAO sense, like if the first page all is in the first page of Etherscan is all in agreement of how to move forward on an issue, then the rest of the votes in that case.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of
We
vote.
haven't seen like many people vote no is the thing.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to test it to see
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it would be one thing if like we haven't seen that yet where there's a group of people with less tokens that want some certain initiative to happen, right? And then another group with large token holdings basically usurp, their effort or something, right? And so
Mhm.
it we haven't seen that. Usually everybody votes yes. Which
Yeah.
I don't personally vote. I don't personally vote. I don't think any of the top holders actually vote all the time, right? So on several of these things. So um so yeah, I I don't know. Once we get there, I think that we'd be able to see a little bit better, right?
Well, just to tease something that hopefully I'll be able to uh, present on this platform or some other platform in the coming week or so. I am looking for solutions to more equitable voting. So hopefully you can also help advise me with regard to that as we go forward.
Cool. Yeah.
Uh,
I think it would be great. I mean, whether it's voting tokens, I think a lot of DAOs they have people actually burn the token to create a deflationary
yeah,
uh, aspect to votes, right? If you actually care about voting on this, then you'll burn some of the tokens, right?
yeah.
Stuff like that. We can implement something like that, and then but then people would have to buy more, right? Tokens later, so it could be
Nothing wrong with having to buy tokens. I mean, I'm for it. Um, I mean, and if relatively speaking, what if maybe to your point, what if the element where we the quorum on this issue, like we're looking for 1,000 votes, one vote per wallet, one token per vote, like that way 1,000 wallets are casting one vote, one token, not like something like that.
yeah,
Like,
that would be cool.
yeah.
Not based on holding size. I think I can change some of the permissions around. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Disarmament, ending poverty, food. Kind of the same. How about gender equality in this case? Women and girls represent half of the world's population and therefore half of its potential. Gender equality, besides being a fundamental human right, is essential to achieve peaceful societies with full human potential and sustainable development. Blockchain and gender development. I mean, I guess if nothing else, one of the things is obviously, this is a very male dominated space. Even providing access as DeFi becomes slightly more mainstream, maybe creating more opportunities for women and girls, and or specific trainings or what have you. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, literally, I haven't taken the time to wrap my mind around it. It seems as if there's no true barrier. I don't know if there's just an interest gap. I mean, you see a handful of women in a few spaces, maybe consistently across projects, but like what's your experience? Like 95% guys, or presumed to be guys, or the people who are actively participating, conversing, seem to be not women.
Gosh, I think there's a lot more women than people assume. Are you talking about the people in the groups and making sort of some investment decisions and whatnot?
Well,
Or
yeah.
people specifically working on the space?
Okay, fair. So I'm thinking about investors, first of all, or investors, gamblers, participants, members, one of the many terms that we use to talk about people who spend their money on crypto. And then I'm talking about people who are in the space on the other side, on management, development, that kind of aspect of blockchain, uh, DeFi
Right.
DeSci stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll say that for any of the investors, okay, out there that are buying into projects, I assume if they're married, there's probably an equal decision on whether to invest on something. So there's an I want to say for every married investor out there, there's probably an equal amount, or for every married male investor out there, there's probably an equal amount of female investors, right? Unless they're
assuming they're, yeah, right,
assuming they're married to a female.
to women, right? Yeah, right,
um,
yeah.
God damn, what happened?
Lots
Yeah,
of disclaimers. Yeah, there you go.
no, it's cool. It's cool. Um, yeah, so I assume that, like, I think that most of the people in some of our project, it's like, hey, let me ask my wife, she's in here too, can she get into this, like, so on and so forth. So I assume that there's an equal amount. In regards to projects, you see lots of really amazing female developers and artists, come up, build things, and drive growth forward. You see plenty of them. There's no, I don't believe that there is any glass ceiling. I don't believe that, this is just coming from me, right? Like, so my
Mhm.
mom's a doctor, okay? Like, born in the 50s, not white, right? The- so I never, this is just what I know and what I grew up with. So I never thought, gender inequality and this and that. I know that there's certain things that people have to overcome. I have a daughter, right? Like,
Yeah,
I know that there's certain things that are more challenging for, in some cases, but there's also things that are challenging for guys growing up as well. Like, um, you have to be tough, right? Like, what's the patriarchal type pressure, of being tough, and there's a, like, I assume, and this is, God, dude, this goes, we're going the wrong direction here, but like, I assume my daughter can go to school and not wonder if, like, I'm sure there's bullying, here and there, right? But I assume that she doesn't have to, like, wonder after school if there's going to be like a gang of girls that are just going to come beat her up, right? Whereas, like, when you're a guy, like, just walking home from school or something, you're kind of on your toes. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that.
during
Great.
I grew up on the
Yeah,
south side of Chicago, went to
I know.
Chicago public schools. I've experienced everything. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
but no, I get you, but I'm going to push back only because
Yeah. You know what? I shouldn't even be talking about this, bro. Okay. I shouldn't be talking. I literally think that there's not as
Excuse me.
much gender, and this is because my mom, she's not white. Okay, she's not the she's female. It, started her business, became a doctor, got educated, everything, so on and so forth.
Hopefully, in that order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was a long time ago. So like why if she can do it, with all those things, that all those what people say are disadvantages, I don't see why other people can't as well.
Yeah, but what you're saying isn't untrue, but it's missing something. Like you're taking the fact that your mom probably was a very strong person, probably had to persevere and overcome some things to get where she got. And you're saying that because she was successful, why can't everybody be successful? Like, maybe instead appreciate that your mom is potentially exceptional, maybe for her time too. Because my like you say, mom born in the 50s, my mom was born in the 50s. Um, in my experience, even for like my grandma who was born, she's passed, but she was born in 21. What she taught my mom's mom, what she taught my mom when my mom graduated high school in 70 was, hey man, why go to college when you could be a secretary and find a husband? Like these are the social context under which people are even being told, hey man, work, education, what are you, crazy? Like, what are you doing? Cook, kids, that's your lane, right? There are challenges, and I'm not here to pretend to know all of you know what women were going through, but what I am saying is finding that golden example, and for you maybe so close to your heart, literally, some example you've had your whole life, maybe gives an impression of ease that may not actually exist.
Yeah, I guess because I have a daughter, and this is something, bro. I can't believe we're on a podcast talking about women's issues because we're
Yeah.
two dudes and probably don't have much right. You know,
Yeah. Fair.
okay, like just say it.
Super fair.
Yeah, but having a daughter, I would like to think that she would be able to go do whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
Just like some of the stuff that I've seen the people around me accomplish despite their identities, right?
Yeah, I mean, I too, I have two daughters. One, we have a daughter about the same age, and then my other daughter is 11, so I have 11 and 7. And I'm always hoping, watching and wanting things to be a smooth path for her. Obviously, we're talking about our kids, right? Our kids happen to be girls, but we want everything to go well for them, obviously. Um, for me, I'm maybe a little bit more aware because if you haven't noticed or if you haven't guessed, my daughters are girls and they're little black girls. So I am very, very aware of every small impediment that they may have to, like, okay, what hurdle might this be? Um, and it doesn't mean that there hasn't been progress in many, many, many fronts, but I'm just always like, I don't think, I have an ongoing conversation that's way more broad and maybe a conversation for another day or maybe not even this podcast, but the just looking at the NBA and the WNBA and trying to figure out, just scratching my head like, wow, these, you clear the stadium, you give jerseys and all the support of this big conglomerate in NBA, and still you can't put butts in seats because you have a quality of gameplay problem. Like you can try to do so much to try to catch people up, and there's still something that's just not quite there. And you could either make the case, well, if they were better, they'd be more people there. Well, you might say, well, if they had, if they didn't have to work a separate job after they finished playing in the WNBA, maybe they'd be better. Like, there's just, I don't know, man. But I'm just saying, I don't want to rule it out. I don't want to suggest that all is well now and that, we've reached full gender equality.
Bro, well, I don't know if it, okay, got it. With pay between sports, I can see. However, I think some of the I think some of the most highly paid, and you could fact check this for me. I think some of the most highly paid athletes overall have been Black females in tennis, right? So I draw tennis into the equation because my daughter like loves tennis, right?
Mm.
And so I play tennis with her like every single day. Okay. And it just so happens, and this is super cool, because I'm half Japanese. And so my daughter, she looks Japanese, right? And the number one female tennis player in the world right now is Naomi Osaka. And she's Japanese. She's Black, but she's Japanese. So I can tell my daughter, I can say, hey, look, she's Japanese, and Japanese people always root for other Japanese people because there's not that many, bro. There's not that many. When you look at city statistics and demographics, you'll see like 2% Asian, 1.5% Asian, 0.9% Asian. And out of that 0.9% Asian, it's like there's like 10 Japanese families or something. And so you kind of, whoever it is, when the Dodgers had Hideo Nomo, like, very rare. I think the best player in baseball right now, Shohei, is Japanese, right? So So anyway, so I think that there's a way to break through in sports, right? And hopefully it's not, sexualized or anything like that. It's based on skill and draw, how many people want to go see Naomi play, right? And it's tough. There's a lot of pressure, especially when you have a mix like that, I think. Especially when you have a mix like that. I think that like a lot of Asian people, it's hard to figure out your identity and really like stand out growing up, right? Because at least at least for me, right? Like, and this, I don't know why the hell I'm talking about this on a podcast, but you're not Will Smith. You know what I mean? You're not Will Smith. You're not Brad Pitt, right? Like, and so with Naomi, like, she's shy. I know that she had like a mental breakdown with the media, media obligations. I think at the French Open, right? And it's sort of like, you don't know how she identified or what kind of struggles in terms of fitting in with her peers that she might have had growing up, being dark, right? She's dark, and her mom has like total Japanese culture. And I think they were in like Japan, and there's like, who knows what kind of, she's like, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
And then like, she's a tennis player. Like that's what it is. She's the best tennis player in the world. And so I think, but I don't know that much about the WNBA. I haven't watched I think ever.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably not the greatest example. I'm just thinking about stuff that I normally talk about. I'm just, work, school, whatever. I mean, okay, when you're a kid, for the most part, I think most people agree you have a lot of women teachers, like K through 12. The higher you get in high school, you start to see more men, and by the time you get to college, it's probably the opposite. Maybe you see more men in teaching roles than women. Like, if you just, and the question is, why would that be? Like, there's so many women, and there are women in education, but the higher you go, you see less. And you could argue, I could argue, because hey, like we both agree, I'm not a woman, I can't really speak on the behalf of women, Maybe
Oh yeah,
women are saying, I don't want those jobs.
full.
Maybe,
Now
but
you know
maybe
what?
not.
Full disclaimer: I I have very little opinion on any of this, so you can't quote me or bring this podcast up here in the future saying Joey said something.
Yeah.
My goodness, yeah.
Well, Joey, we have probably exhausted both the patience of our listeners and our time. I will figure out a way to work in a few more of these next time we talk about a similar topic in terms of the use case for DeSci and DeFi.
I'll leave you with
But
one thing. Can I leave
sure,
you with one thing? Okay,
please.
so I have my friend Daniel. He works inside of the ecosystem. Okay, and he one day he was saying like, there is like, how do some people have an advantage, right? It's like some people have an advantage, some people have a leg up, some people have this, and I'm always of the belief, right? And it might be a bit unrealistic. I'm always of the belief that no, anybody can do like what they want as long as they really like try. I have like this overly optimistic perspective on it. And he's like, no, no. And I'm like, okay, like watch. Okay. And so I made a telegram. Okay. We were out fishing on a boat when we were discussing this. Okay. And he's of that woke culture, sorry, Daniel. uh but he said like how we're having a bit of a disagreement. So I was like, okay, no, watch. So I make a telegram or whatnot. I grab 12 random people that I don't know, okay, and start Yasha, okay, from nobody knowing who I was, even though I have some success in real life. You know what I mean? Nobody know who I was, but driving an ecosystem to a peak market capitalization rate of like over $400 billion. Um, Granted, that's crypto inflated, status, but tens of thousands of individuals, you know what I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
and guiding many people to complete complex tasks, as well as creating many millionaires along the way. Um, I think has been quite the thing that has been done decentralized, without any, like real Lego. We didn't go get, a bunch of VCs. We don't have a whole lot of centralized power. Like the original team was literally 12 random people that I'd never met before. So
Hmm. Hmm. Well, again, let's not always look at the exception. It I can tell you that most projects that don't include randomly thrown together strangers and with all their best plans in DeFi still fail.
yeah, 100%. But there
Right.
is a
So
way. That's what I was trying to prove.
yeah.
I was trying to prove there is a way, that you can do this. People don't realize that we did it without any marketing money, no marketing wallet,
Hmm.
not knowing anybody that we're around. Anyway,
Well,
it's time.
you you come from a long line of exceptional people.
I don't know.
We'll, we'll leave it at that.
I don't know.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll stick more generally to the topic next time. We'll see.
Thanks, Ken.